What would you do if, in the middle of the night, you stumbled upon a child alone in a nearly empty store, scared, barefoot, and carrying the weight of a life far beyond her years? Would you assume someone else would help? Or would you step forward, knowing that your choice could change everything? For Keanu Reeves, a routine stop at a quiet Walmart turned into a life-altering encounter when he found Lila, a 5-year-old girl clutching a single dollar, trying to buy diapers with no adult in sight. Torn between his own obligations and the sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong, Keanu made a decision that would unravel a heartbreaking reality. What he uncovered led to a desperate race against time, one that tested his instincts, his compassion, and his belief that some responsibilities transcend fame and fortune. How far would you go for a child you just met? Before we continue this story, let us know where you are watching from. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Keanu Reeves was driving down a lonely stretch of highway on his way to an early morning film shoot. The night was silent except for the hum of his engine, and the headlights carved twin beams into the darkness. It was 9:30 p.m., and aside from the occasional passing car, the road was empty. Suddenly, a warning light blinked onto his dashboard, making his heart sink. The handbrake alert illuminated, and although he tapped the accelerator, the car's power began to dip. With practiced calm, Keanu steered his vehicle to the shoulder before it coasted to a stop. Once he parked safely, he flicked on the hazard lights, their rhythmic flashing the only bright signals in the inky blackness. He tried the ignition again, but the engine coughed and died. A second try led to nothing more than another sputter. Exhaling, he stepped out into the crisp air, zipping up his jacket and scanning the area for any place that might still be open. He circled the car, checking the tires and the handbrake mechanism as best he could, but nothing seemed obviously broken. When he opened the hood, he couldn't spot any loose wires, and there were no visible leaks. The engine looked fine, though something was clearly amiss. His phone was at 5% battery, dangerously low for a night like this, so he promptly dialed roadside assistance. Main Road 101, he told the dispatcher, speaking clearly. I'm on a long route outside a small suburb called Willow Creek Hollow. Nearest gas station is about 10 kilometers away. Could you send help? The dispatcher promised to get someone out as soon as possible, but warned him it might take a while at this late hour. Keanu ended the call and noticed his battery icon had dipped even lower. He needed a place to buy a charger. Then, not far off, he spotted a Walmart sign glowing in the distance. It looked like a safe bet for finding some way to charge his phone while waiting for the tow truck. The store was only a few blocks away, so he locked his car and headed down the quiet street. The wind brushed against his face, carrying the chill of the night. By the time he reached the Walmart, the exterior lights were already dimmed. It was close to closing. Only one set of sliding doors still functioned, opening with a subdued hiss as he approached. Inside, the place was eerily calm. Fluorescent lighting cast an artificial glow on rows of products and empty aisles. A single cashier, her name tag, Red Maria, was busy counting the day's receipts at the front register. She barely glanced up, so Keanu politely cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said in a low voice. "Could you tell me where the electronics section is?" She pointed toward the back of the store without really looking at him. "Over there. We're closing in 15 minutes. It didn't bother him that she hadn't recognized him. He just needed a charger or power bank, and he was in a hurry. As Keanu headed deeper into the store, his attention was abruptly drawn to a strange sight in the personal care aisle. A tiny girl, no older than 5, stood alone. She wore only a white tank top and underwear, her thin arms wrapped around herself. He slowed down, looking around for any sign of a parent or older sibling, but saw no one else. The child seemed to be studying something on the shelf. Keanu felt a surge of concern. She was far too young to be here by herself, especially in such sparse clothing. He wrestled with his priorities. His phone battery was inches away from dying, and he needed to stay in touch with the repair service. But this child was alone. Finally, he took a deep breath and decided to check on her first. He approached carefully, not wanting to frighten her. "Hey there," he said gently, crouching so he was at eye level. Are you okay? Where's your family? The girl turned, and her large eyes met his. She bit her lip, as though deciding whether to speak. Keanu's phone vibrated, his screen flickering with its last gasp of battery. Then it went dark in his hand, cutting off communication with roadside assistance. Now, he faced a genuine dilemma. Rush to find a charger in the electronics aisle or stay and help this vulnerable little girl. He looked at her small frame, the store's fluorescent lights reflecting on her wide eyes. A promise to himself formed immediately. He would do both, but her safety came first. Stay right here for just a minute, okay? Keanu said softly, fighting the rising panic inside. The girl didn't reply, but she gave the slightest nod. Keanu turned and dashed toward electronics, scanning the shelves until he found a power bank. He snatched it up, relieved that there was at least one decent brand available. Clutching the box, he hurried back toward the front register. He hoped to find an employee who could help watch the child while he settled his phone situation. As he glanced down the personal care aisle, he noticed the little girl hadn't budged. She stood there, her expression unreadable, while the overhead lights cast harsh shadows on her tiny form. At last, he spotted a young employee kneeling to organize products in another aisle. "Excuse me," Keanu said, out of breath. "There's a small child alone in the personal care section. She looks about 5 and is only wearing a tank top and underwear. She needs help." The worker glanced up, startled. His name tag read Mark. He rubbed the back of his neck with an anxious shrug. "Yeah, that might be the little girl we've seen before. She comes in sometimes. We've tried asking if she needs help, but she usually runs off." Keanu frowned. "Then tonight's the night we do something about it. She shouldn't be wandering around by herself." Mark seemed uncertain. "I'll check on her," he agreed. "But we don't really know who her parents are. She's in here alone a lot." Keanu's concern intensified. "Okay," he said firmly, "please make sure she's all right. I need to buy this power bank so I can charge my phone. I'll be right back." Mark nodded, heading for the personal care aisle. Keanu continued on, hurrying to the front. As he arrived, Maria finally looked up from her counting. Her eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, you're Keanu Reeves," she gasped, looking mortified at how dismissive she'd been moments earlier. Wow, I'm so sorry I didn't notice." Keanu managed a polite smile, though he remained distracted. "No worries," he told her, setting the power bank on the counter. "Could you please ring this up? I'm in a bit of a hurry." Maria scanned the item, still clearly starstruck. "That'll be $29.99, she said, glancing at him with newfound excitement. "Would you mind if I took a quick photo with you before we close?" He hesitated only briefly, glancing over his shoulder toward where the little girl and Mark had gone. He couldn't see them now. "Sure," Keanu replied, though concern for the child pulled at him. Maria hurried from behind the register, raised her phone, and snapped a selfie. In the photo, Keanu managed a half smile while his eyes strayed in the child's direction. After the quick flash, he handed over his credit card, waiting for the transaction to finish. As the receipt printed, movement near the baby care aisle caught his eye. The little girl stood there alone again, except now she clutched 2 packs of small diapers. Mark was nowhere to be found. The child looked both determined and frightened, the packs nearly the same size as her torso. "Maria," Keanu asked softly, "did Mark come up here? I don't see him anywhere, and the girl's still alone." Maria's smile faded. "I haven't seen him. Maybe he went to the back." Keanu's jaw tightened. He grabbed his power bank and hurriedly stuffed it into his pocket. His phone was still dead, and he needed to plug it in soon, but first he wanted to ensure the child wasn't left fending for herself. At that moment, the little girl walked toward the front counter. She placed the diaper packs on the floor, rummaging in her waistband for a rumpled dollar bill. In a shaky voice, Maria said, "Sweetheart, that's not enough to buy diapers. You need more money." The girl's eyes went wide with confusion and alarm. Her tiny fingers curled protectively around the wrinkled bill. Keanu didn't hesitate. He handed Maria the extra cash to cover the diapers. "Put the rest on my tab," he said. The child looked up at him, solemn and unreadable. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, collecting the diaper packs. Keanu knelt slightly, meeting her gaze. "Are you here by yourself? Where's your mom or dad?" She pressed her lips together, refusing to answer. Something about her guarded eyes told him she'd learned not to trust adults. Maria offered a sympathetic smile, but seemed uncertain how to proceed. "Let me at least walk you out," Keanu offered gently to the child. Then he turned to Maria and said, "Could you page Mark one more time?" He was supposed to help. "Mark to front counter," Maria announced through the store's intercom, sounding more worried than before. Keanu then spotted Mark peering nervously from behind a shelf. Catching Keanu's eye, Mark emerged, shoulders hunched. "Look, I tried to help," he muttered, but she ran off again. Keanu felt frustration flare inside him, but he tamped it down. "It's all right. Just please stay with us until we figure out what's going on." As the store prepared to close, the little girl turned toward the exit without a word. Keanu, feeling responsibility weigh heavily on him, followed her out into the night. Outside in the dimly lit parking lot, Keanu noticed the little girl walking briskly past rows of vacant spaces. At first, he hesitated, wondering if she'd see him as an intruder or a threat. But the more steps she took, the more determined he felt to keep her in sight. There was a sense of desperation in the way she clutched the diaper packs, and something about her tiny form, so alone under the flickering street lamps, tugged at his conscience. He quickened his pace. "Hey," he called softly, "can I help carry those?" She paused, turning to give him a long, silent stare. Then, with surprising solemnity, she shook her head. "No, I carry them," she said. "All right," he murmured, respecting her choice. "Do you at least mind if I walk with you? It's pretty dark out here." To his relief, she nodded, and he fell in a step beside her. "What's your name?" he tried. "Lila," she replied, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Keanu," he said gently, though she didn't appear to react to his name. "Where are we going, Lila?" She pointed across the street to a run-down neighborhood on the other side of a narrow road. The houses there looked weathered and poorly maintained. Boards covered some of the windows, and dim porch lights created long, eerie shadows on overgrown lawns. Keanu recognized it as an area struggling under financial strain. He cast a quick glance at his dead phone, remembering the roadside assistance call and the mechanic waiting by his stalled car. But Lila's situation was far more pressing. "Do you live close by?" he asked her gently. She nodded. "Not far," she said. "Mommy told me never get in strangers' car, so I walk." "That's understandable," Keanu replied with quiet admiration for her caution. "Well, if it's all right, I'll walk with you." They made their way toward the neighborhood, crossing the dark street carefully. Once they passed under a broken streetlight, Keanu kept an even closer eye on Lila, worried a car might come barreling by unexpectedly. She led him up a cracked sidewalk until they reached a small, dilapidated house. "This is home," she said simply, pointing at the peeling paint and sagging porch steps. Keanu's heart sank at the sight. The front yard was littered with random debris, and the windows were too grimy to see inside. Lila climbed the steps, gripping the diapers tightly, then turned to Keanu. "You go now," she said softly. Before he could reply, his phone, still lifeless, reminded him that he had a mechanic waiting. Torn by the conflict, he considered his options. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, the front door creaked and swung inward. No one stood in the doorway. Darkness stretched beyond the threshold, thick and stifling. Lila carefully stepped inside, setting down one pack of diapers. She disappeared for a moment, then re-emerged holding a small plastic bag that gave off an unpleasant odor. Keanu realized it was full of used diapers, which she promptly carried outside to a trash bin. He stood there, stunned by the responsibilities this tiny girl had somehow accepted as normal. "Lila," he called gently once she returned, "is there anyone else here?" She gave a cautious nod, then grabbed his hand. "Come see," she said, leading him into the darkness. Inside, the air smelled stale. There were no lights on, and the floorboards creaked with each step. When Keanu found a switch on the wall, it clicked but offered no illumination. The bulb must have been out. Finally, Lila pulled him past a cramped, messy living room into a makeshift bedroom. A toddler, no older than 2, stood in the corner. His big eyes shone with confusion in the faint glow from a streetlight filtering through the curtains. Lila placed the second pack of diapers on an old armchair and then waved a hand toward the little boy. "This June," she said, voice tinged with a protective note. "He's my brother." Keanu felt a wave of pity and concern. Both children were alone at night, no adult supervision in sight, and the house was in a terrible state: scattered clothes, empty food containers, and sticky stains on the floors. "Where's your mom?" he asked softly. "Mommy comes, mommy goes," Lila answered with a small shrug. "No, daddy. Sometimes men stay, sometimes not. She left 2 nights ago." Keanu's chest tightened. The raw reality of their situation stung more than any fictional script he'd ever read. Feeling a fierce urge to help, he glanced around for food. The refrigerator was nearly empty, containing only questionable leftovers and a couple of wilted vegetables. Just then, his phone buzzed to life briefly. He'd tucked the new power bank into it, but it had only a tiny charge. It was the mechanic calling for the second time. With a sigh, Keanu answered. "I'm so sorry," he said hurriedly. "I got held up." "Yes, I'll be there soon." He ended the call to see Lila and June watching him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Guilt tugged at him for leaving, even momentarily, but he had to make sure his car was handled and that he could keep communication open to get them real help. Bending down to meet Lila's gaze, he spoke gently. "I need to take care of something, but I promise I'm coming back. I'll bring food. Is that okay?" She stared at him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "We wait," she said, turning her attention to June, who was tugging at her shirt. Keanu stood, scanning the dimly lit room one last time before stepping back outside. The old door closed behind him with a soft thud. His heart felt heavier with every step away from the house. But he forced himself to walk quickly, determined to fix his car, buy supplies, and return to these children who desperately needed someone to do the right thing. Keanu hurried back to the spot where his car had broken down. The night seemed darker than before, every minute feeling precious. In the distance, he spotted the repair technician leaning against the side of the car, tools arrayed at his feet. The man looked up with clear annoyance as Keanu approached. "I've been waiting quite a while," he said curtly, crossing his arms. "I'm really sorry," Keanu replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Something urgent came up. Please, do whatever you need to get the car running." The technician gave a quick nod, popping the hood. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he connected a diagnostic tool to the car system. "Seems like the electronic brake glitch triggered a power loss," he muttered. "I'll reset the software. That should give you enough juice to get where you're going, but you'll need a proper inspection tomorrow." Keanu exhaled in relief. "Thank you," he said, reaching for his wallet. "I appreciate you staying." "Yeah, well," the man replied, shrugging. "You're lucky I didn't take another call, but you're all set now." Handing over a generous payment, plus a tip, Keanu slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Quick gratitude flashed through him, but his mind was already back on Lila and June. It was nearly 11 p.m. Everything nearby would be closed, except perhaps a 24-hour gas station convenience store. That was the best shot to grab food for the kids. He drove off, following a GPS search on his charging phone. It led him to a small station, bright fluorescent lights humming over a barren lot. Inside, he picked up bread, snacks, bottled milk, and whatever else he could find that might help them get through another night. He also grabbed a fresh container of baby formula, assuming June might still need it. With his basket full, Keanu checked out quickly. The drive back to the ramshackle house felt like an eternity. When he parked and approached the worn porch, he noticed something was off. Lights glowed from inside, lights that had definitely not been working when he left. He balanced the plastic bags against his hip and knocked firmly. A woman's voice barked from the other side. "Who is it?" she demanded, sounding irritated and slightly slurred. "It's Keanu," he said evenly. "I." Before he could finish, the door jerked open, revealing a disheveled woman with bloodshot eyes. An acrid smell of alcohol and possibly other substances wafted out. Behind her, Keanu glimpsed a man sprawled on a couch. slurring his words as he waved around a small bag of white powder. The woman eyed Keanu with suspicion. "What do you want?" she snapped, clearly not recognizing him. Then she spotted the bags of groceries. "Give me those." Keanu held the bags back. "I bought these for Lila and June," he said firmly. "They said they hadn't eaten. Mind your own business." The woman snarled, trying to yank the bags from him. "I'm their mother. I'll feed them when I feel like it." As they struggled, an angered voice came from the couch. "Hey, keep it down. And don't worry about the brats. I've already taught them to stay in their room." Keanu's chest tightened. He could sense the tension, the danger. "Where are Lila and June?" he asked, trying to peer beyond the woman's shoulder. She glared at him. "Upstairs, maybe. I told them to stay put. Now, give me the groceries." Keanu knew then that this situation was worse than he imagined. The woman was clearly impaired, and the children were at the mercy of two unstable adults. He had to do something. With a free hand, he fumbled for his phone to call the police. As soon as the woman realized what he was doing, she lunged at him, clawing at his arm to knock the phone away. He stumbled back, dropping one of the grocery bags. Items spilled across the porch. The man rose unsteadily from the couch, cursing under his breath, but couldn't seem to stay balanced. Heart pounding, Keanu managed to keep hold of his phone and pressed the emergency number. "Stop it!" the woman shrieked, a flash of panic in her eyes when she realized whom he might be calling. She grabbed at the phone again, but Keanu turned his back, shielding the device. "Hello," he said urgently when the dispatcher answered. "I need police assistance at 174 Maple Way, Willow Creek Hollow. There are 2 children in danger." The woman froze for a moment, then began backing up, cursing under her breath. The man hovered in the background, still unsteady, muttering incoherently. In the midst of all this, Keanu spotted tiny faces peeking from behind a door up the hallway, Lila and June. Their eyes were wide with fear. When Lila saw Keanu on the porch, her expression flickered between hope and terror. "It'll be okay," Keanu tried to say, his voice trembling. "Stay right there. Help is on the way." He heard the dispatcher confirm that units were en route. The woman realized there was nothing she could do to stop the call, so she slammed the door, shutting Keanu out onto the porch. Sirens cut through the quiet night soon after, and Keanu exhaled, bracing himself for what would come next. Red and blue lights danced against the battered facade of the house as 2 police cars screeched to a halt. Keanu stepped back, relief mixing with apprehension. Officers jumped out, hands hovering near their holsters. The lead officer, a stern woman with streaks of gray in her hair, quickly approached. Her name badge read Sergeant Martinez. "Mr. Reeves?" she said, her tone brisk yet polite. "We received your call. Please explain the situation." Keanu recounted everything, finding Lila alone at Walmart, following her to this house, the discovery of her young brother, and the altercation with the children's mother and another man. As he spoke, officers took notes and eyed the ramshackle home. Sergeant Martinez nodded once, then signaled her team. "Officers on me. We're going in." They pounded on the door and identified themselves, but no one answered. After a tense beat, the sergeant nodded, and 2 officers forced the door open. A chaotic scuffle ensued inside. Raised voices, the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. Then, one by one, officers emerged, leading the handcuffed adults. The woman glared at Keanu. Her words slurred. "You ruined everything," she spat, as they guided her to a patrol car. The man, clearly under the influence, mumbled incoherently and was placed in a separate vehicle. While the adults were secured, Sergeant Martinez returned to the house. Moments later, she reappeared with Lila and June, each child bundled in an oversized police jacket for warmth. Their eyes darted around nervously until they landed on Keanu. Lila broke from the officer's hold and dashed forward, clutching Keanu's hand. "Is Mommy going to jail?" she asked, her voice trembling with confusion. Keanu's heart twisted. He knelt to meet Lila's gaze. "Your mom needs help," he said gently. "The police are here to make sure she gets it. Right now, they want to keep you and June safe." Lila's lip quivered. "But I love Mommy," she whispered. Can you help her not go? Keanu swallowed hard, struggling to form the right words. I promise I'll do what I can, he told her softly, aware that the justice system would take its course. The best thing we could do now is make sure you and June are all right. Another officer guided the children toward a patrol car where they could wait. Sergeant Martinez approached Keanu. We have to take the children to the station, she said, her tone gentler now. A social worker will meet us there. We'll sort out emergency foster care. We'd appreciate a statement from you, Mr. Reeves, since you witnessed everything. Keanu nodded, his chest heavy with responsibility. Of course, I'll follow you to the station. Before they left, he retrieved the scattered groceries from the porch and handed them through the open window of the patrol car to Lila. I brought these for you in June, he said. Remember I promised I'd come back with food? Lila clutched the bag, eyes brimming with both gratitude and sadness. Thank you, she said quietly. She then tore open a package of bread and offered some to June, who took it with wide-eyed curiosity. The police convoy pulled away, and Keanu followed in his car. The neon digits on the dashboard clock read well past midnight. In a matter of hours, he was supposed to be on a film set, lines memorized, makeup on. But that seemed so distant now, overshadowed by a deeper moral imperative. While driving, he called his assistant, Patrick, apologizing for the late hour. Patrick, Keanu began, forcing steadiness into his voice. I have an emergency. I won't make it on time for tomorrow's filming. That's a big deal, Patrick replied, though concern replaced any frustration. Is everything okay? Keanu paused, glancing in the rearview mirror at the police car carrying the children. I'm helping 2 kids who were in a terrible situation, he explained. Please inform the director I'll be late. Maybe very late. I'll handle any consequences. I just need to see this through. Patrick didn't press for details. All right, Keanu, I'll let everyone know. Don't worry about the set. You do what you have to do. Ending the call, Keanu felt a wave of relief. Support from his team meant he could focus on Lila and June. He might not solve all their problems overnight, but he wouldn't abandon them in this crisis. Once at the station, officers led the children inside. Lila glanced over her shoulder at Keanu, obviously scared about her new, unfamiliar surroundings. He gave her a reassuring smile. I'm right behind you, he promised. Over the next few hours, Keanu provided a detailed statement to the authorities. A social worker arrived, checking over Lila and June for any injuries. While the kids were examined, Keanu caught sight of their mother being processed in another part of the station. She glared at him, but said nothing, too drained or intoxicated to fight anymore. Finally, Lila and June emerged with the social worker, each child clutching a small blanket. Lila's tired eyes found Keanu instantly. She walked over, hugging him fiercely. Thank you, she repeated, her voice muffled against his shirt. Keanu wrapped a gentle arm around her shoulders. You're safe now, he whispered, acknowledging that their path forward would be complicated. But for this moment, they were no longer alone in the darkness. As the early morning sky lightened outside the station, Keanu Reeves realized how profoundly this chance encounter had changed him. A broken-down car had led him into a situation he never anticipated, yet he couldn't imagine having done anything differently. The image of Lila standing in Walmart, clutching those diapers with her last dollar, still gripped his heart. In the days and weeks ahead, legal proceedings would determine whether Lila and June could remain with their mother or find a safer home. Keanu knew he would do everything in his power to support them, whether that meant appearing in court, offering financial help, or simply visiting them to ensure they felt cared for. This experience exposed a deep disparity that often goes unseen. Vulnerable children left to fend for themselves amid adult chaos. For Keanu, it became a stark reminder that even in his life of fame, comfort, and busy schedules, there was always room to step in for someone who needed a helping hand. By sunrise, he had grown more certain of one thing. Some responsibilities outrank all others. A film shoot could wait. Publicity could pause. But a child alone in the night should never be overlooked. And though he couldn't personally solve every underlying issue, poverty, addiction, neglect, he could at least offer the kindness and protection these kids deserved. Holding Lila's hand that night had been a turning point. It wasn't just about saving them from immediate danger. It was about breaking the cycle of invisibility that can swallow children in need. In that quiet moment outside the station, Keanu promised himself he would never forget Lila and June, or the lesson they had taught him about compassion without limits.